Hey, 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 we're back.
We're back. Thank you for joining us on the Strategic Shift, where we
Yes.
really talk about like all of our life shifts. I'm one of your hosts, Priscilla Scott,
I'm Diane Desia.
and today we're going to talk a lot about like how to overcome fear and some of the mental barriers that you might see in order to be able to make bold moves, whether it's in career, in business, in family. There's just so much.
Yes, there's a lot to be scared of, for sure. I mean, if people really look at, the worst thing, but you got to have faith, right? That's the only thing that's kept me going is faith. Um, like even with you, here you went and started your own business, and you were in a really good position. That's scary,
Mhm.
and that's amazing for you to do that because a lot of people wouldn't do that.
That was a crazy moment in my life. So I had started. So everyone who knows me knows like I live and breathe Parks and Rec. I was president of our state association for 5 years. I present all over the country, and I really believe that parks and recreation agencies change lives.
Mm.
When I was a kid, I used to, we immigrated from the US and we didn't have a lot of money. My parents didn't understand the American structure. And so, us kids, older kids, watched the younger kids. We played in the street. We terrorized the community center, getting stuff from the vending machine and like beating on them. But my parents couldn't afford to put us in any of the programs there, even though they were more affordable pricing than going private because they just couldn't afford it. And there was a free program in the middle school that I got into when I was in middle school. And a lot of the friends that I made in that facility are still my friends now.
Made a difference.
It made a difference.
Wow.
And the staff in that facility, I'm still friends with their kids.
Oh, that's awesome.
And they're the ones who taught me how to apply for financial aid, how to go to college. They forced me into my first job. Like all of the things that literally got me to where I am today came from Parks and Rec systems and staff.
Wow.
And so I did that for 23 years. But about a year ago, my priorities changed. And I think coming out of COVID, because during COVID, Parks and Rec turned into emergency childcare, and I was managing teams and we were running childcare as a single parent with my child in tow, which I'm very grateful that I had that career because as a single parent, I don't think I would have been able to survive. I had supervisors, team members, colleagues that would help with my son. I don't know how many staff members he went home with. And we really built like a whole community around that. But about a year ago, I started to look at my life and I just thought like it's just moving so fast. Every other month I was traveling somewhere and I had a lot of help with my son, but I felt like I was missing a lot of things. And so I started thinking about like, maybe I want to try something else. Maybe I want to focus on real estate or maybe I want to go into business for myself. But there was that fear of like, I can't leave. I'm a lifer.
Right.
Like I've been doing this since I was a kid. And then I walked away from a 6-figure salary to start my own business. And there have definitely been moments where I thought, what was I thinking? But I'm so happy.
Really? That's good. That's like the main.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I used to like just wonder, like, when my son would struggle, like, am I doing the right thing? What is he going to be in therapy for down the road?
Right.
And I just kept thinking, like, we can't go down this road anymore. And so now I get to drop him off. I get to pick him up. He gets to watch me work. I get to structure life a little bit differently.
Right.
And so
That's amazing, girl. Like I said, a lot of people would not do that. They would definitely, put their life on the back burner, just to make that income. So I really give it to you for that because that's amazing. Like I said, I'm excited for you because you do seem very happy. You seem like, even though it's hard, like, even with me, I've always lived my life very spontaneous. I never had a fear of anything. I never had a fear of dying. I never had a fear of failure. I never had a fear of anything until I had my daughter. And once I had my daughter, like, it was like all this fear came, like, to the point where I'm like, I was getting anxiety, like, to the point where I'm, like, thinking of the worst things of, like, even driving at night or going to places. Like, I mean, like, even now, I feel like I'm her bodyguard, like, I'm always on guard, when I'm around her. And it's crazy because there's a lot of feelings that I've never had to deal with because I was so fearless. And now I'm like, every decision I make, I have to really think it through 10 times because I'm like, this can affect her. So,
What do you do to overcome that?
um, a lot of praying, a lot of praying and meditation. And at this point, like, I mean, I lost my mother when I was 4. It was very sudden, and it kinda opened my eyes to, you don't know when you're gonna leave.
Mhm.
So at the end of the day, you really don't have control. You hear about people dying all the time in Vegas on car accidents in the daytime, just doing the simplest things. You hear about people getting killed all the time in Vegas because people don't know how to drive. And you really don't. You don't have control. Like, even your child, things can happen. You see things happening to kids all the time. So it's just a lot of faith and just trying again to put myself around good energy or better environments. I don't do anything of what I used to do before I had her. So I think that helps a lot.
I
But
think kids have that effect on any parent.
there are some.
Most.
Yes.
Most.
Good parents, good parents.
Good parents,
Yeah.
yes. Because, I shared in our last episode how when I got laid off, I was like, "Oh, all carefree." Now I'm not laid off. I
Mm-mm.
own my own business and I still am like, "Okay, we gotta pay bills. I
Yeah,
gotta make sure that all these things are taken care of,
yeah,
and I gotta make sure that he's taken care of first."
yeah. It's not easy being a single mom, being an entrepreneur. Um, and I give it to people that have more than one kid because, like, I'm struggling with one. Just to have to put all that time into your business, and then you don't want to take it from your child. It's not easy. The balance is not easy, and sometimes I do have problems like balancing it. There's times when it's a sacrifice, but in the long run, we're all we're trying to set up our children for greatness, something better than what we had.
So what advice would you give to a parent that's trying to, whether it's pour into their existing business or maybe has a career, like what are some things that have helped you out?
You've got to weigh out the options. Like, sometimes your child needs you more than your business. You have to, sometimes you're going to have to put your business on hold so you can give your child that attention because they need it. Because regardless, your business is going to, be up and down, and so is your child, but your child is growing up. And, before we know it, then they're going off to high school. You want to make sure they're prepared
Mhm.
because there's a lot of parents that don't prepare their kids. They just kind of put them into the world and just hope for the best. And I mean, you are hoping for the best, but you got to give them the tools.
Mhm.
I think that's super important. Don't depend on the school to give them the tools to make it in this world. That's not it. But it is a struggle. Like, there's plenty of times, like, my daughter, like, like I said, these feelings that I've never had before. I'm like, why do I feel like this? Or, there's things like she don't even realize the things she says to me are like heartbreaking. But before her, like, people could tell me anything and I just didn't care. it would be very hard for me to care about what people say, but as soon as, like, she's just nonchalant, not even knowing the damage she's doing, and it's just her being a child, and it's like, you can either take it personal or you can just kind of show them, hey, like, this is not good.
Yeah. I think for me, I'm good at compartmentalizing.
Yeah.
Like, I am great at crisis management.
Yeah.
Like, I've been told throughout my career that I'm rigid, that I'm firm, that I don't show emotion. And I think that it's not that I don't feel the emotions,
Right.
right? But usually in a crisis, I'm like, okay, big picture, what needs to be managed, and then I'll fall apart later.
Right.
And so for me, in those moments where I can usually take a moment, look at everything, like, I can remove the emotion, like, I actively will remove the emotion. I'm like, "Okay, what do we need to do here?" And then move forward.
Right. Yeah. I do work good under pressure. I will say that. Um, but like I said, you're always questioning, am I doing the right thing? And at the end of the day, this is a human being. You're not going to be able to control this human being. This human is going to grow up and make its own decisions. And I got to remember that because, as kids, our parents controlled us.
Yes.
It was a whole different raising, and now these kids, they have access to things that we didn't have access to. They got feelings that we didn't have feeling. It's just a whole different generation. And I always have to keep in my mind, like, this human came here, and I don't own her. Like, even though
And
that's
has
my
her own
child.
feelings, opinions,
Yes.
and emotions.
Right. And who am I to tell her how she's supposed to feel, or, you can't. It's just trying to guide them, and just remembering that you don't own that child. Even though it's your child, you don't own them. Like, they're going to grow up and they're going to do what they want when they want. And your job literally is to love them and try to point them in the right direction.
Mhm.
And even then, you can do everything right, and they come across that one wrong person,
Mhm.
and it could do a lot of damage.
I grew up with a lot of fear, like,
And
a lot of fear.
yeah,
My especially, so very, like, low income, high crime area where my grandparents really tried to keep us out of it.
mm,
And so in Costa Rica, we went to school 30 minutes away from where we lived
mm.
because they didn't want us turning out like what
Right,
our
right,
environment was. And then here in the US, my parents didn't know anybody.
right,
So they're always looking at everybody with a side eye, like, never allowed to spend the night at anybody's house. Like, no, you can't, like, no, you're not going into their house.
right, right.
And just even growing up,
Um,
for them, the traditional systems of like go to work, get a good job with good benefits,
mm,
like that was really important because of the stability factor. So I've I've been the first of to do a lot of things in my family. My fear comes from is I am the fallback. I am the backup plan.
mhm.
So I can't have anything
Happen to you.
not work out.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Because I do have a lot of people that are relying and depending on me. But in the same sense that that causes like fear and anxiety, I feel like that also fuels me to move forward.
Well, what do you do for your fear and anxiety? Like, how do you control it?
Um, ooh, you know, I recently started, so my business coach, his big thing is focus on what needs to get done today
Yeah,
and stop. Yes, I have a long term plan, but today we're not going to focus on my long
yeah.
term plan. And Pitbull actually brought it up in one of his, and I grew up Hispanic, so
Mhm.
it's for us too, but pasos cortos, vista larga. So it's like take short steps for a long vision.
I mean,
And so now that is something that I heavily lean on is what can I do today that's going to get me to where I want to be in the next year.
exactly. I do agree with you. I mean, even if it's one little step, you're making that step, but instead of not making any steps, you know? So I feel the same way. Again, planting the seeds and just trying to make sure they grow and water them. And it's super important, you know. I know a lot of people that don't have goals, that they're just kind of like going through the motion, you know, and it's like you can be one of those people, or like I said, at least try,
Mhm.
you know, try to be better.
Yeah, and I'm getting better about giving myself grace because I've always had to do things in like everything has an A to a B to a C to a D.
Mhm.
So I'm not good at going with the flow.
Um,
I am not good at impromptu. I'm not good at last minute. Like
mm,
everything is on a grid, on a calendar, on a schedule. And it used to like throw off my whole world if
mhm.
it didn't go like according to plan.
Oh, see, I'm the opposite. I plan things and it don't go. So I'm just like, I mean, I kind of can plan something, but I notice if I plan it, mm-mm. So I kind of just go with the flow, but then I know where I need to go.
Yes. So I'm starting to get better at that too because like now transitioning to where I'm home more and the way that I like structure my life like during the daytime hours I get as much work done as I can and
Mhm.
then once after school hits like I that's probably the hardest job of my life is parenting. But now I'm like okay, let's let's not create little me's. Let's figure out how they can still have fun
Yeah.
and um like I'm starting to channel that okay, let's go with the flow. Okay. We don't have to be like so much on a schedule.
Right, right, yeah. No, same thing. I when I'm during the day, I try to get as much done because as soon as I get to with my daughter, it's like everything is about her, and yeah, it it's just prioritizing, you know. I see a lot of people who don't prioritize, like they go on these extravagant trips and they do all this stuff, and then they come back and they're stressed out because they have all these bills and everything. And I'm like, I just can't, you know. So I try to prioritize for sure, like what's most important. And at the end of the day, our children are most important.
So I will say I do prioritize traveling.
You do?
I do.
Okay. See, and
We're
I
always
want to do it.
gone.
Yeah, I want to
We
travel.
do. We travel a lot. We still have family in Costa Rica,
Right.
but it's funny because when I was a kid, I hated going. They
Mm.
would have to force me to speak Spanish. Once I spoke English, like I didn't want to speak Spanish.
Uh,
And now, as an adult, we like I try to instill that in my son so
right.
that he
That's
doesn't lose it.
yeah.
But we travel everywhere, not just to Costa Rica.
Well, I'm gonna be traveling with you,
You
girl.
are. And I always like to add the experiences, right? Because I think with my ex-husband and with my son, they hated traveling because especially if we went to Costa Rica, like I go to visit the people that I love
Right, right.
and they are going to a top travel destination in the world and then
Right,
they don't get to travel. So we do a little bit of balance. Like
right.
we test out a different all-inclusive resort every time we
Nice.
go
Yeah.
and we do like usually our last day is something memorable.
Uh,
Like the last time we were there, we did ATVs on the beach and in the
uh,
mountains. And I had so my nephews are wild. If my brother is watching, he knows what I'm talking about. But they are absolutely wild. So we took all the kids. My niece came with us too, my brothers, and we went like up into a waterfall area
oh,
and the
that's
kids got to
nice.
splash around. We've done like jet skis,
Yeah,
we've done horseback
that's
riding on the beach,
awesome.
like just things that like you can't take those
Connecting with
experiences.
nature. That's what people that's see,
Mhm.
and that's what I'm missing. You know, that's what I've been missing because I've always been hustle bustle. I've never given myself the time to reconnect with nature. It was just always, oh, what else do I got to do? So that's that's another thing that I want to really focus on is that balance because it's
Mhm.
super important.
Do you think that you are hard on yourself?
Extremely.
Okay.
I'm extremely hard on myself. Um, Again, because I lost my mother at such an early age, I always felt like I wasn't just accomplishing for me, but I was accomplishing for her, you know, because she didn't have a chance. So it was like I was living not only for me, but for her, you know. And now that I'm older, now it's like I'm living for her, my daughter, so I never really gave myself a chance to live for me.
Mm.
I've just always been about, I don't know how much time I have. And I mean, that could be a good thing, but it's a bad thing too, because I know I drove my dad crazy. I know I feel bad because I felt like I was just invincible. I mean, imagine not having no fear, and then all of a sudden I have this child at 40, you know, like literally it took me to 40 to realize like, oh, wait a minute. Now I got to be careful. Like it's
I feel
definitely,
like I'm backwards
yeah,
from
it's
you
different. It's totally
because
different.
I've always been so incredibly cautious with everything that I do. I'm
Yeah,
like,
no.
we joke because I went through a hellish teenage phase and we were out, egging and toilet papering many, many, many years ago. So not anything recent, but I joke I was always the one saying, "Hey guys, we should not be doing this. We should not be doing this." Yet I
Yeah.
was there in the midst of it all, right? And I can always like spot fear from a mile away. Like even now when I see the kids and they're playing, I'm like, "She's going to fall.
Yeah, no.
That one's going to hurt himself." Like, "Oh my gosh, someone's going to hit their head." Like I've always been like the one to be overly cautious. And now I'm like on this quest to figure out like, I can let go.
Yeah. See, and unfortunately, when I was 15 or something, I was stealing cars. I was stealing cars, I was fighting, I was, dealing, I was doing too much. And yeah, and then here I am. I grew up in Stockton, California. At that time, it was like the wild, wild west.
Mhm.
I've been shot at, I've had guns pulled out on me, I've been almost carjacked, I've been robbed. Like I really been through the ringer. I was running away at 15. Like I feel bad. Like I literally had to go to my dad and really apologize to him. Like I'm sorry, that I put you through that. But now, like I said, I mean, I live like I'm always thinking about how I could be a better person for God and for my child. So it's totally, I look at myself like, who was I? It's, it's a whole
But
different.
as I'm looking at you though, it kind of makes sense all of the business risks that you've taken because if you've survived carjackings and being shot at, like, okay, so the stock market crashed,
Yes,
you know?
a few times. Yeah.
And so I almost feel like that gave you that resilience
Yes, it definitely has.
to navigate some of those changes.
Yeah.
Have you ever in those moments, because before we recorded, we were kind of talking a little bit about, how the impact that someone losing their business or whatever can have on them. Do you ever think that any of the losses that you've had in business took a negative toll on your mental health?
Of course. I mean, like I said, I had a couple people who tried to ruin my business for no reason, you know what I mean? Or, you know, people that rent from me just kind of be really shady again for no reason. And yeah, it made me question like, is this something like what I it really, because here I am giving my all to my business and I have people that want to destroy it. It's, you take it personal. You
How do
take
you pull yourself out of that?
again, praying to God, and working under pressure. And again, from having so many things happen to me, I've learned how to just kind of take the hit and focus my energy into another way. Because there's going to be doors that open for you, there's going to be doors that close on you. And you can't just say, okay, this door closed, it's not going to be what I want. So now I just give up. No, it's like you got to find another way. And I've just always found another way. At the end of the day, things don't happen for a reason, and things happen for a reason. And you just got to go with the flow sometimes,
Mhm.
because you things, especially having a business, you're going to have things that come at you. And again, you're going to have people that are going to try to scam you or do some funny things. And you're just kind of like, you just me personally, I have a lot of faith in God, and he helps me on a daily basis.
Me too.
Yeah,
Definitely me
yeah,
too. That's a big, well, for me, that's been, like, the biggest driving factor in
yeah,
overcoming any hurdle that I've
yeah,
ever experienced. And I always like, I try to practice now, like, an object in motion stays in motion. So, I said earlier how my business consultant was like, "Just focus on what you need to do today," but I also think, like, if I don't know what I need to do, I need to do something.
yeah.
I need to
Something.
do something to either get myself out of this funk or, like, when I am feeling like, ugh, that's usually when I'm like, "Okay, what can I do?" Small wins, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And that's been big for me.
You are your biggest investment, even when in doing the medical spa. Like, I see how I make people feel good. Because people come in and they want something that's fixed, or they're just not happy, and they're very hard on themselves. We are extremely hard on ourselves when it comes to, we're always looking at the negative. Oh, this doesn't look right, or this doesn't look. But in reality, you just have to make yourself feel the best. If it's just
Mhm,
getting your nails done, or your hair done, or getting a new outfit, or going and meditate. Like me, I like to go to the gym because that's my only stress reliever. I have to, like, it has the endorphins that I need.
mhm.
But you got to take care of yourself in whatever way possible. If it's something that you don't like, you got to work on that, because it shows. Whenever you're just dealing with people, you could tell when somebody's miserable. You could
Yes.
tell when somebody's just not a happy person, the way they treat people or the way they are. And at the end of the day, you just got to really invest in yourself to be able to make that next person happy. So I think that's important. Recently, I had a friend. She told me, she was gonna go out and have, this, get dressed up. And I'm like, wow, I haven't done that in a while. And she looked at me, and, well, she was like, you're right, because you fell off, like, completely. And I'm like, what? Like, what? How you, girl, you don't want to know. You don't want to know how you felt. And I'm like, wait a minute. I take care of myself. I eat good. Like, I take care of my skin. How am I falling off? Well, you don't do the stuff that you used to do. You're right. My whole life has shifted. I mean, I waited 40 years to have a child. Now that I have this child, I want to enjoy being a mother, because I was robbed of that. I didn't have that mother daughter
Mhm,
relationship. So now I'm living through my daughter on something that I miss my whole life.
mhm,
So I'm doing what I want to do. It's just not how I used to do it,
mhm.
but at the end of the day, I enjoy, even though my daughter drives me crazy, I just love being around her as much as I can.
Yeah. And, you bring up some really important points. I think most people don't realize, because when you choose to have a child, whether and not to say that anybody who hadn't a child by accident or unplanned doesn't love their child, right? But when you're making a choice, I think it's a bigger, like, hits you in the face, like, I'm literally living for somebody else,
Yeah.
because kids are 100% selfish. Like, they
Mm.
can't fend for themselves. They're brought that way. Like, when they're born, they cry, and it's like the
Woo!
whole world has to figure out what's wrong with them. They get their nourishment from somebody else, their well-being, you got it, everything. They have no ability to take care of that for themselves. And so I think sometimes, I was talking to a friend recently who's like, "I can't wait to have kids. I can't wait to have kids." And he's in his mid-30s, and I was telling him, "Yes, you can, because once they're here, I promise you there's no going back." Like, my son pops tags like you wouldn't believe, and he's always put together from head to toe.
Aw.
He's tried every sport, done all the things, and then I make sure that whatever I'm cooking or whatever we're getting to eat is something that's in his very picky list of,
Yes,
food
I'm there
food
with you.
guide,
Yep.
but I don't do the same things for myself.
Right.
And so
Exactly.
some people would say, "Oh, you've fallen off," but I just think maybe you're just doing the parenting thing
Right.
right.
Well, it's funny too, because my dad, he helps me with my daughter, and he's always comparing, because he sees how she is and he's seen how I was, and he's like, "Oh, you weren't like that. She's, I don't know, she's something about her." And I'm like, "You're right. I was getting beat. Okay. I wasn't allowed to show emotion. I wasn't allowed to get hurt. I wasn't allowed to show emotion. I wasn't allowed to do this. I mean, I was like, so you're right. It's totally different.
It's funny to see parents as grandparents. Everybody talks about it because my mom, there were a lot of us.
Yeah,
You sat at that table until you finished eating whatever it is that she made.
exactly.
You didn't have any choices. Whereas, my son has some food allergies and he's a picky eater,
Mm.
but she will make him multiple things and then end up driving through somewhere. And I'm like, Mom, and then, when he was younger, there was a time that he was like screaming and yelling, and he must have been like 2 or 3. And I went to go swat him. She's like, "Don't hit him.
Oh
Don't
wow,
hit." And
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
like, "Really?" Because I remember she used to say she would take us places and we'd never touch anything because the first time she'd be like, "Whack." And
Right.
she'll say, "Oh,
Yeah,
you
no.
make me sound like a monster, but I still love you, Mom."
Yes. Yeah, no. It was definitely a whole different environment now. And I tell my daughter that I'm like, you get the good one.
Yes.
My father, I learned how to ride a bike by myself. I learned how to roller skate. I don't think he was never no hands on. Like again, the main advice he gave me because he was a single father was if anybody tries to get you, or tries to kidnap you, just have them kill you right there. Okay, don't let them
Oh my
take you
god.
anywhere. Just have them kill you right there. All right, have a good day.
Oh my god.
And that would usually stick in my head, like, okay, well, I can't get kidnapped. I'll just, So it's a totally, and nowadays you can't even let your kid go out in front. You got to be
Mhm.
careful of your surroundings at all times because you got people shooting in places, or I mean, you just never know. Like people are just on edge.
People are on edge. I just
So
try to look to see, okay, what can we do that isn't so heavy today?
right, right,
Because I grew up in a world where everything it was like, don't do that, don't do that, don't do
right,
that.
right.
You could get hurt. You could, and our parents did the best that they could with the
He
tools that they
really,
had,
yes, yeah,
especially, in that time. Like we grew up at a time where that two income household was starting to become a thing, and you're growing up with a single dad.
yeah. I
I'm
had
growing
not.
up with immigrant parents. Like
Mhm.
it was, for them to try to keep up, they
Yeah,
did the
no,
best
it's
they
very hard.
could.
Yeah,
So,
definitely. But yeah, so and now it's just, trying to figure out their purpose, even though that's the whole thing is everybody comes here and it's like trying to figure out your purpose and they're afraid of failing. They're afraid of, being alone or all these fears of trying to find your purpose. And now you got this little human that you're like, okay, what is this what's her purpose? How can we get her there?
mhm.
You know?
Have you figured out your purpose?
Um, Literally, I just try to be good to everybody, because you never know whose life you could change. When I used to live in San Francisco, I used to feed homeless people around me. And even though, like, you would think nobody would think that, but they would remember. Like, I remember giving one man some salmon. And it was like months later, and I hadn't seen him. And here he comes in. He's like, "Oh my God, that salmon?" And I had forgot all about it. But here, this man who does drugs, who's living on the street, remembered this salmon from 3 months ago. Like those little things, you just
Mhm,
never know. Just helping my friends, just being a positive role model to my friends. That it's a lot of different purposes. My daughter, you know, changing, keeping my dad sane. Because who knows where he would be if he didn't have me to, consistently say, you're worth it, you're great, you're this. Because again, depression it runs in a lot of families.
mhm,
But just trying to help people. Like if you see somebody that needs help and it doesn't cost you nothing, that could be a purpose. So it's not just one purpose. I think and even my clients to see how they, are happy and how I've helped them, that makes me feel great. Like so it could be a lot of things, it's just and that's what I'm constantly praying is like, God, I want you to live through me, help me
mhm.
be a better person for you and whatever it may be. So I just try to do that consistently every day. If you see a way that you can help somebody, why not? Why not? If it's not taking from you, if it's not, it's just like that's why I don't understand when people wake up and like, oh, how can I screw somebody over today? Or, I'm just gonna be a mean person for whatever reason.
Mhm.
I just like, yeah. So I just try to make sure I'm consistently, doing good things for good people or just for people, period.
That's a good way to live.
Yeah.
That's a good way to live. Well, if you liked anything that we said or it resonated, make sure you like, follow,
Yes.
subscribe, depending on where you're watching us or listening to us. And
And
we'll,
give us feedback.
yes,
I would love to know
send us
what
your
you guys
questions.
think. Yes, that's super important. You know, um, but yeah, I'm excited.
Me too.
Yes. I definitely want to help more people because believe it or not, that helps. That makes me happy. You can only buy yourself so many material things, but when you actually help somebody and put a smile onto somebody's face, it's a feeling that you can't get from
Anything
buying,
else.
yeah, material things.
Mhm.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.